Yeah.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. So, we are going to present to you today law firm marketing in 2026, what's working, what's failing, and what to prioritize now. And I think this is like an especially pertinent topic for this year, as the marketing landscape is changing so much. So, as promised in our marketing of this event, you are going to have a lot of action items to take with you today. We think they're going to be really helpful. So, Michelle has put together a wonderful 2026 ready marketing framework that she is going to give to you. We are going to cover some mistakes that both of us as marketers see quite often, some practical, doable actions. We know that marketing can feel overwhelming, so we're here to help you kind of break that down. And then I'm going to give you kind of a unique perspective on how marketing, tech, and ops kind of intersect. We're going to talk about some pitfalls. And of course, we are going to have to talk about how to avoid a PR crisis, especially because we have a PR expert on the call with us to weigh in. So, to introduce myself first, my name is Jordyn. I'm a marketing associate at Strategic Technology Solutions. We are an exclusively legal focused MSP. And that means we work in IT and technology exclusively for law firms. Don't ask me too many technical questions though, because I am the marketing associate. So today I'm coming to you not as a technologist, but as a marketing association or associate who's in that world and kind of has that unique perspective. And I'm super excited to welcome Michelle. We met at the ALA National Conference last year, and I just knew from her booth and her team that she was just like wonderful and professional. And as I was kind of conceptualizing this idea, I was like, I know exactly who to call to co-host. So, Michelle, I will let you take it from here.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm excited to present with you. I'm Michelle Calcote King. I'm principal and president of Reputation Inc., and we exclusively serve B2B professional services firms. And I would say about 80% of our work is law firms. And we do our core service offering is public relations, but we are full service. And we work mostly with mid-sized law firms, but we've got firms from 5 attorneys up to 1,300 attorneys. And we're based all over the country. We have 17 team members. And yeah, I'm excited to chat today.
Awesome, Michelle. Thank you so much. All right. So let's dive into it, Michelle, with that.
Yeah. 2026. So 2026 looks different for law firms. And there are a few key things shaping what's different now. And I think a lot of us know them. We've been grappling with them, but I wanted to summarize what I'm seeing as what's changing things for us. And we all know AI is the big elephant in the room. And the shift here is that, firms with their marketing, they aren't competing for just clicks anymore, clicks over the website. They're competing to be the source an AI system trusts enough to reference. And that transition is really important. It adds another layer to how we market. So, what that means is being mentioned, quoted, or summarized often matters more than being, number one for a search keyword. And so things like PR are really rising in importance because you've got to prove your credibility not just to your human audience, but to AI, which is really prioritizing those credibility signals. But AI also really prioritizes specificity. If you've got a lot of generic content, you really need to push your attorneys to get a lot more specific in your content. And what also changes is not just being loud. You have to be consistent in your marketing, and we'll get it into AI a little bit later. But we're also seeing is increasing noise in the legal market. So what does that mean? It means that while we see a lot of these big mergers, at the same time, a lot of the legal market is fragmenting. We've got boutiques spinning out of big law. We've got firms expanding geographically. We've got alternative services providers entering the market. So when the legal market was a little simpler, quieter, competence was enough. That's why we've all got those managing partners who have said all the time, I just need to do good work and the work will come. But in a noisier market, that changes. So things like clarity and credibility become a real differentiator. And today, credibility is proven differently. It's proven, it's demonstrated. We don't just declare it. So that's really changing how we do things. And I think client demands are increasing. And I know you guys hear this from lots of sources, but clients demand transparency, credibility, and speed in their services. But how you market now has to show those because firms or clients, prospective clients are judging what is this firm going to be like to work with in through your marketing. So firms that explain sort of how they work, how they think, build trust faster than those because clients are going to expect that once they become your client. So you've got to really show that through how they can interact with you before they become a client. And there's also shrinking organic reach on social and the rise of the individual attorney presence. And it's as I was thinking about this, I was thinking, lawyers have always been important to the marketing process for firms, but it's becoming more and more important as algorithms are favoring people over sort of firm brands. And we're finding that, as this organic reach shrinks, law firms don't win by posting and marketing more as a firm brand. They are winning by empowering their attorneys to show up as credible, helpful experts. So there's a lot of forces coming together that I'm sure you've heard of the term humanizing your brand. It just means more of what, as law firm marketers, we've been trying to do for a long time, which is get our attorneys out there, educating the market, interpreting the market, and becoming our most effective distribution channel. And then finally, the other thing I'm seeing is more pressure to show marketing ROI. And that's coming while it's becoming also more difficult to show that ROI. So, legal marketing now, because it's so complex, rarely produces that clean sort of last click attribution, meaning we know exactly how, what drove this client to become a client. That's getting harder and harder to do while also your leadership is more and more saying, what's working? Is the money I'm investing actually translating to outcomes? And so I'd like you to think more in terms of directional confidence, instead of this sort of false precision. So you've got to look at showing that the firm is becoming more visible, credible, and relevant in the markets it wants to win, and that those signals that prove that are moving in the right direction. That's really how we should be thinking about ROI in this landscape. So that's the landscape that we're working in. Let's see if we can get it to move forward, Jordan.
I
Let's
got you.
see.
I can't.
Yeah, thank you. I clicked and it didn't do it.
Okay, I got it. We've been
Thank you.
fighting with the
Yes.
screen share today, so
So, I wanted to provide a framework if I were looking at my year and what are the big things I should be thinking about. And first and foremost, I can't talk about your marketing strategy, and you can go ahead one more. Without talking about the foundations, because without those foundations in place, everything else we do is going to be less effective. So, um, first and foremost, your brand clarity and your positioning. Um, I've been in this industry for a very long time, and positioning has always been difficult for law firms. In part because law firms were founded and they grew in an era that geography, proximity, in-person relationships did much of the work that positioning now does for us. So things like reputation was local, referrals were personal, and that differentiation that clients could say, okay, I understand what this is about. It often happened in a room, in a physical room, because of those relationships that were made in that environment. But today, that has shifted because clients evaluate firms digitally. They evaluate firms earlier and across geography. So without that benefit of physical proximity or personal introduction, firms have to articulate who they are, what they do best and why it matters. That becomes really important to get that right. Um, so it's about providing that clarity and being clear about, at what point is this firm going to play a role in my business? And so if you're a firm with a lot of practice areas and services, this can feel really challenging. But I think what's important to remember is that positioning and articulating your brand is less about shrinking it and making it nothing, but more about organizing it in a way that clients can understand and remember you, to have that recall. So it's really important that you start with that clarity before you add channels. So, and the first and foremost, you've got to get clear on who do we serve? Who are our priority clients and industries? What problems do we solve best? Where do we have real proof and credibility? And what do we want to be known for now? Not everything that we've ever done. And for those broadly structured firms, I often talk about this transitioning into layered positioning. So we go from the firm level to the practice group level to the individual attorney level. So that firm is that unifying role. Practice group's own specific role. So that firm level is what kind of firm are we? Practice level is when do clients call this group? And the attorney level goes down to why this lawyer specifically. So and positioning, I think is incredibly important early on in a firm's growth. And at that stage, it's differentiation, it's being clear. But as you get bigger and more complex, it's about coherence. So it's less about gaining visibility, but more about making it clear what you do and owning that space in your mind. So, and each of these we could spend an entire presentation on. So I'm kind of giving you guys some high level thoughts for you for this year. And I'd love to go a lot deeper in several of these. But the other thing foundational this year is your website and AI. Your website, it's no longer just a marketing asset. It's a discovery engine for AI systems, and AI systems are using your website to decide, which firms get surfaced, summarized, and recommended. So you really have to take a step back and look at your website from an AI perspective. And I want to give you guys a few pointers on this. And again, we could spend the whole session talking about this, but uh, AI focuses on clarity. So clarity over cleverness. So, in the old days, we'd have very clever headlines. It was very brand focused. But now with AI, it has to be focused on clarity, structure, and proof. Those are really the keys. So AI systems sort of extract meaning from structure. So you've got to look at your headings, how you're organizing your site. Is it a semantic organization, meaning we're not just organizing this around the way our law firm is organized, but instead we're organizing things around topics, content, or concepts, user intent. Those kinds of things are how you need to organize your website so that AI can really easily understand what you do, associate your firm with specific problems. That's really key. And then, of course, surface your firm accurately in responses. The other thing to think about is, these pages are now, especially practice pages and bios, they're decision pages. They're not just background information. So one of the key shifts we talk about with bios for our clients is, it used to be just a listing of education and credentials and things like this, but now you've got to include reputation and relevance. So we've got to show those proof points, those awards, that media coverage, things like that, so that and that has to be contextually on those pages, not just in a trophy page on your website, but you have to put it on the bio page or on the practice group page. You also have to get more specific in your content, meaning more explicit, I should say. So instead of that high level, broad language, like we provide, comprehensive employment counseling, you get very specific about who you work with and what are those things you do. So you could translate that to we advise multi-state employers on wage and hour compliance, workplace investigations, high risk termination. So it's, again, when you're interviewing your attorneys and you're creating content, it's pushing them to go a little deeper and give that specificity in your content. I would also think about some old school tactics that worked for SEO, but really, really diving into them. So things like really clear headings. And think about your headings in terms of client questions instead of internal categories. So rather than just think about what would a client type into AI for those headings. And then I talked about those authority signals. So things like chambers bans, media mentions, speaking roles, all of that has to be placed contextually throughout the site. So that AI is really seeing those signals and giving your firm the authority that it deserves. So again, that could be a whole presentation, but I just wanted to pull to the forefront some best practices. And then messaging consistency. If you've been a marketer for a long time, this is something we've always been charged with, right? We've long worked to ensure that our audiences hear this coherent story. But you know, historically, when we did that, we were really just focusing on your brand. Did that dilute the brand if there was inconsistency? But today, especially with AI and again, a more crowded, noisy marketplace, if it's inconsistent, that creates a credibility problem and a visibility problem. So there has to be one single voice because AI is going to create that for you. AI does really well is synthesize content down. So it's my favorite way to use AI to take a big, chunk of content and really tell me exactly what I need to know. But you have to think about if AI is doing that, what is that message that's coming across? And you can achieve that. You can achieve it to surface the points that you want to make by being consistent in your messaging. So templates, standardized structure, things like that. We're trying to eliminate confusion with both AI and your human audience. All right, we can move to the next slide. So, what are some of the things in this environment? What are some of the things that we should be doing? I've been talking this about for a long time, but I think it's even more important today. 2026 really requires an editorial mindset. So, thinking like a publisher. We've been talking about this a long time with the rise of content marketing, but it really matters more so today. So firms that, just sort of post when they have time, aren't thinking like publishers. When publishers think with, organize their editorial with intention, they choose themes. They treat content as an ongoing narrative, not just a series of one-offs. So think in terms of one article doesn't make you an authority, but a body of work does. So, and that body of work needs to have some coherence to it. We've also heard a lot about AI rewarding freshness, but it can't just be one-offs here and there. AI surfaces relevant and authoritative content more than it does freshness. So you really need to have an editorial system and a pattern so that your market really associates you with certain kinds of thinking. And the other thing that an editorial mindset means is not just acting like hey, this thing happened. So not just updates. So if you're putting out regular client updates that really just regurgitate the news. That's not a publisher mindset. Clients want perspective. They want analysis. Information is plentiful. They get what just happened from the news. So they don't want to know what just happened. They want to know what it means. And that is really where you can differentiate with that perspective, analysis, judgment. Um, the other things I would add to this are an editorial mindset. You need to align that with your PR. So PR is a way to get more visibility and credibility for your editorial that you're creating, and you should align the two. One model I love to use, especially if you're kind of really struggling to organize things, is what I call a hub and spoke model. I didn't create that term, but I love it because what you can do is create quarterly themes and create your big piece of content, whether that's a webinar, whether that's a lengthy blog post or article, whatever it is, and then take that theme and then repurpose. So if you're kind of struggling with where do I start to get some coherency, some organization, think quarterly, think themes, and then think repurposing, that repurpose ruthlessly. So that might be one way to start that. I nodded to this earlier, but it's a really critical theme for this year, and that is that um, clients are trusting human signals more than quote unquote firm ones. So, but I wanted to bring this back to the editorial mindset, and I thought about it. Publishers don't just rely on a single masthead. So they also have kind of your star folks who are their opinion writers, their byline authors. There's journalists that I follow that have become personalities in their own right. So this is really happening both in the media world as well, in that, we now follow podcasts by a particular New York Times writer, that's how this isn't happening just with, sort of corporate marketing. And you know, law firms especially struggle with abstraction, and if you can think in terms of an editorial brand that has beats, has people who cover a beat, has contributors, has sections, you got your business section, your sports section, the more you think in terms of the way publishers do it very, very well, the more success you're going to have with your editorial. But going back to lawyers being the central to this, lawyers aren't, this isn't new. Lawyers have always been central to marketing, and probably even more so in the old days when it was meeting people in person at your Rotary event or your local chamber meeting. So what's different again is how clients evaluate firms. So prospective clients are now evaluating clients digitally long time before you, the firm or a lawyer, even knows they're being evaluated. So, and they still want to evaluate individual attorneys. They still want to understand who your attorneys are. So your first impression used to be a meeting, but now it's really is digital content, and it's silent, so you don't know it's happening. So it means so shifting into this editorial mindset means recognizing that your attorneys, they aren't just service providers, but they are really your first point of contact with the market through your digital channels. So long before you get contacted with an RFP or that email comes in, your prospective clients are forming opinions based on what your lawyers publish, what they share, what they explain. And so that's really important that you empower your attorneys and view that channel as your most important channel. And what does this mean for those referrals, those RFPs? It means that the referrals, they aren't just sort of blind instructions. They don't, or introduction, and they don't close deals. They open these evaluation windows, right? So they trigger verification behavior, meaning, the prospective client gets the referral. They're going to Google the firm. They're going to review your practice pages. They're going to look at the bios. They're going to look at LinkedIn. They're going to look for that sort of visible proof of expertise. And so that is critical to impact those RFPs. And RFPs also reward familiarity and proof. So when everyone's saying the same thing, when everyone's got the same shiny deck and the same credentials, familiarity and your visible brand become that differentiator. So that consistency, that the lawyers being visible and top of mind creates that reputation memory that's going to move the needle in that decision maker's mind for that RFP. All right, we'll go to the next slide. So this is my sweet spot. So earned media and authority building. So this is really critical for both AI and where we're at right now in the market. So I wanted to give some pointers about what the media is actually looking at and how they surface mid-size, small and mid-size firms. That's, I think most of you guys are in that place. So um, what we find, yes, there are certain media outlets that really prioritize coverage of the Am Law 100. But that's not the only way firms get covered. And there's a real opportunity for your smaller and mid-sized firms to get coverage and stand out in the media. So, firms that are kind of in that old school thinking of, firm announcements, self-promotional quotes, that generic commentary. Instead, they need to really shift because what reporters want are sort of clarity, analysis, lawyers who understand, the business impact, the regulatory impact, those practical interpretation of the topic that the reporter is covering on, that subject matter fluency. So, but also things like speed and reliability. These are ways smaller firms can really break through and achieve some visibility in the media, because that's the kind of thing that really matters when a journalist is looking to find sources and to report on them. And I think smaller and mid-sized firms have a benefit because they're closer to the work. There's less layers and filters to get through internally, and they can move a little faster. So there's real opportunity here. And again, going back to it's important to shift your attorney's mindset from not talking about themselves, not pitching their bio, not giving the marketing spiel, but to instead, pitch insights. So, a specific insight tied to a real issue, a short explanation of why it matters now. The lawyers we've worked with that are the most favored by media outlets, that the journalists come back to them time and time again, and we kind of work our way out of a job, are those ones that can distill a topic or an insight very quickly and provide analysis for that reporter in a very succinct way. So that's what's really critical to stress to your attorneys. And then I would say there's some mistakes that firms make with news that isn't news. So it's all, practice group launches, important lateral hires, office openings. It's still important to announce that news. These are big happenings in your firm. But what you can do is frame your news in the context of the marketplace and what your clients are talking about. So, why was this lateral hire important right now? What about it will impact your clients? If you've opened an office, what led you to do that? And again, tie it back to what's happening in the marketplace now and provide that context. And then in addition to that, don't rely on those announcements as your PR. Again, clients are looking to figure out, how does this firm's attorneys think? How do they work? What's it going to be like to work with them? So that's where really providing that commentary, informing the media about trends that the lawyers are seeing, providing insight on how, with market shifts that are affecting clients, what is the legal insight they need. Those are really important to mix in with your firm news. Um, and then in terms of what level of media coverage moves the needle, what's important to understand here is that this goes back to consistency. And instead of thinking about one big campaign, one big hit, that pay for play vanity piece, instead you've got to think about consistent presence and repeat visibility. And that is really in the realm of things like trade publications, that industry media, some of those regional business outlets, those legal verticals. Consistent visibility in those publications, it's what's going to move the needle from both an AI perspective and a human perspective, because your clients are focused on their industry. They're focused on information that impacts them and their jobs, and that's typically done at that level. So I would, yes, it's nice to get that one big vanity piece or that high level quote, but your bread and butter should be, where your clients are reading every day about the problems that impact their business, and that is typically those trade and legal publications. Um, and I would think in terms of just like money, visibility has a compounding effect. So the more it kind of creates this credibility loop, the more attorneys are quoted, their visibility increases. We've seen this with clients. They get, seen as that go-to person in that area. Reporters start calling them. They want to hear from them a lot more. And that in turn makes your RFP response seem a lot less speculative, right? And it really matters a lot, that compound credibility effect, in areas where a lot of us are, litigation, regulatory work, corporate work, all of those areas. They're wanting to feel like they're coming to recognized experts. And the way to do that is through that compounded visibility through those regular hits. So we can go forward. All right. So your fourth pillar. I have long said I don't believe in campaigns, marketing campaigns. And what I mean by that is, marketing works best when it is a consistent, ongoing effort. So, yes, you can think of your quarterly planning as a campaign and use that word. So I don't want to, throw that out. But what I really mean is that you've got to have a system, right? You've got to have a process. You've got to have an engine that can almost work without you, the marketing director, there. It needs to have set things that you create and distribute on a regular basis. And the way to do that is to create that editorial calendar, those regular operations that support getting that content and those media pitches out, planning on a quarterly basis, all of those things. So you've got to commit to what are you going to do and how are you going to do it regularly, and make sure it is systematized, throughout your the work that you're doing. And this is where outsourcing can help. I often get asked, what should we keep in house? What should we outsource? I think that this is going to differ, by type of firm. But the way I like to look at it is, in-house people really own strategy. So they own, that strategy, that messaging, the attorney relationships, getting that internal alignment and decision making. So as long as that's owned, then you can start to think about what can we do well in-house and then what can we do externally. And I like to think in terms of if you're going to be, if there's something that has to be done proactively and consistently, and if you know, well, I get pulled in every direction and I'm suddenly off on an RFP response or whatever it is, and some things still need to happen in a proactive, consistent way, that's when you can outsource because you can really, they're not, they have one single remit, and that's going to continue happening. But you and on the in-house side really have to own that strategy and those relationships with the attorneys, and working with leadership. Um, it's also important to get, obviously, we've talked about this a lot now, getting attorneys to participate. Um, at Reputation Inc., this is something we talk about a lot because we can't do our job if attorneys don't respond. So we spend a lot of time thinking about um, building our own credibility with attorneys, so that when they see us in their inbox, they know we're not going to waste their time. So things like, having very clear asks, providing them something to respond to. So drafts instead of those blank pages, giving them a starting point, that predictable cadence, and then really visible payoff. So that's when we get the most buy-in, is when they start to feel that impact, that traction. So it takes a little bit, but I think the best thing you can do is really showing that you understand their practice area, what they do on a daily basis, and that you're not going to waste their time. You're going to come prepared, and you're going to meet them where they are. And then deciding what not to do. I often say that strategy isn't deciding what to do, it's deciding what not to do, because we know as marketers that we have a million tools in the toolbox. So strategy is really figuring out what exactly are we not going to do and where are we going to focus that. So, things like no more one-off vlogs without a clear fit into our editorial calendar. Nothing gets done without a clear owner, that is driving it forward. So no more client alerts without clear analysis and judgment around, and to-dos for clients and what they need to take away. So I think that's really important, when you're looking at your strategy and figuring out what to do, is to look at what not to do. We can move forward. So here's some mistakes. So trying to be everywhere. This is hard in an age of multi-channel marketing, right? We're hearing both, we got to be on multiple channels, and then we're hearing, okay, don't try to be everywhere. And what I mean here is I'm a big fan of choosing just a few channels or strategies and honing it and making it really great before you move on to the next one. So if you're going to do email client alerts, do that well. Make sure it is, you've got a process, a system, then move on to the next one and build from there. But expand later, but only after it's working. Letting attorneys write content alone. This is a constant challenge for us. And we understand that lawyers like to often author their own content. And I think that we'll never get away from that. But what's really important is that you guys are a team, or whoever you're working with is a team with your attorneys in their content. So because attorneys think like lawyers, they don't think like editors. The content can often sound very academic instead of useful. So where I think the shift is, you've got to create these drafts, these outlines with attorneys, not just by them. Don't just give them an assignment and see what gets done. Make sure that you're providing that editorial support to your attorneys, and that they see the value of that, because otherwise you're going to get those really wordy long drafts full of legalese, and it's going to get delayed forever. You're not going to get anything out the door. So it really has to be a team environment. And then I see often confusing branding with visual identity. I'll be honest, when I think of brand, now I'm a PR person, I think of PR. Because a brand is what the marketplace thinks of you, and is how you're understood. And yes, your brand is your visual identity. It's your logo, it's your new colors, it's your fonts, all of that. But brand is how the marketplace interprets you. So visual identity supports the message, but it certainly doesn't create it. And brand visibility is becoming incredibly important, given all the things that I talked about earlier. Um, in the olden days, in the content marketing phase of marketing, we could often publish content and it would be found. That was the kind of uh, that was the whole point. That was the idea of content of inbound marketing, right? And what we're seeing, and I know you guys, I'm sure have heard this, is we can't. There's too much out there. There's too much content, and assuming that by posting a blog post, doing a LinkedIn post, that's enough. It's really important to think through your distribution with your content. So, what are those channels that you use to get your content in front of the right eyeballs? Social media, email, a media pitch to get a bylined article. Every piece of content that you create can be distributed, meaning repurposed and used in different ways across those mediums. So distribution is becoming more and more important. And if I didn't make this point strongly enough before, I'll make it again that we can't treat marketing as a one-time event. When we get leads where, the firm is in a it's not a good spot for the firm. Lawyers aren't busy. They suddenly realize they need to market. That's the wrong time to have been thinking about marketing. And it sounds counterintuitive, but marketing is a long-term endeavor. It's not. You can certainly throw a ton of money at, uh, you know, some paid strategies, but you turn that money off and all that goes away. So great marketing is a system that you have implemented. So things like an editorial calendar, those quarterly priorities, those operations that support all of that. It has to be a consistent narrative that you are continually putting out to the marketplace. And without that, you're going to get a blip and then nothing, a blip and that creates you get a loss of energy and momentum, and it also breeds to the marketplace as inconsistency. Those are the ones to avoid, and hopefully, I know I threw a lot at you guys, but hopefully that gives you some things to think about as you go into your marketing this year.
Thank you
And
so
I'll
much.
turn it over to Jordyn.
I loved it. I loved it. All right, so Michelle's talking about building this marketing engine. So I just kind of want to talk about the engine parts, let's say. So the technology that kind of fuels your digital marketing. I think you'll be surprised at some of the links between kind of these concepts. So I want to start by just saying, you can have this kind of sustainable marketing success that Michelle is kind of helping you out with by kickstarting, with these strategies, or you can have these initiatives that fizzle out after the quarter or after the year or after a couple weeks. And you can feel frazzled as well. A lot of your kind of determination there depends on the technology you're using. And again, I'm coming to you kind of as a marketer today. I'm not, I'm here to talk tech. It's what we do, but from the marketing perspective, having pretty good technology nowadays or, excellent technology, it's not really optional. So as Michelle said, so much marketing is digital and virtual now. So we know that, for certain types of law firms, sometimes physical media works really well, whether that's, ads, billboards, mailers, stuff like that. But so many clients now are discovering you through online searches, through social media. They're vetting you this way. They're not even just discovering you, they're kind of determining your reputation through those methods. So 66% of clients actually strongly prefer to work with firms who are using the most current tech. Why is that? I will kind of get into that later, but it has a lot to do with the client experience. So clients have been burned before, and the rate of change in technology at law firms can be pretty slow. So I think they kind of know what the other side of that is like, and they're kind of demanding better now. And again, aging and data technology just makes it harder to sustain those efforts in so many ways. And the last thing I'm going to touch on, cybersecurity incidents. So that's kind of like the PR marketing explosion for law firms a lot of the time, but I'm not going to scare you, and I'm not just going to tell you, go change your passwords or do this or do that. I want to give you really kind of actionable advice for getting through that. So the first thing I want to touch on, I'm not going to read you this whole slide. I'll send it to you after, but this is a personal pet peeve of mine that I just couldn't wait to bring up. App sprawl. So I used to work at several different marketing agencies throughout my career, and we would have a lot of different clients. When you have a lot of different clients, they have a lot of different tools, right? So, it's not always unified. So, whether you are the solo kind of marketing show at your firm, whether you have a small team that you're leading or that you're part of, or whether you're working with an agency or outside help, too many apps and solutions are just frustrating. So there is not a huge kind of, there doesn't need to be a huge kind of web of functionality for marketing. You don't want to be a jack of all trades and a master of none with these technologies. Really, what you want to do is pick a tool that has what you need and learn how to use it really well. And that's what we want to do before we get into like, AI extensions and add-ons and, integrations and workflows. We really just want to make sure that we keep that momentum by making the experience really frictionless. Um, the other thing, free tools can be tempting. I have in my life seen clients who maybe have a free subscription to, say, like a social media publisher, and they can have like 4 accounts on their free subscription, but they need to have 6 accounts. So rather than upgrading because they want to kind of keep the marketing budget slim, they just make another account. So now they have 2 sets of credentials, and they're not always being super hygienic with the passwords. They're just like sending them out or putting them on post-its and stuff. Because to be honest, it's very frustrating when you have that many tools to contend with. So if you want to be able to have a really effective marketing flow, if you want to keep that engine running smoothly, you want to keep everybody on board, including, your attorneys, um, just make sure that the technology and that the apps are backing it up and that they're not super excessive. And it'll save you money in the long run too, especially if you have all these apps. Even if they're all free, the amount of time that you're spending on training or the time that you're spending on frustration or the loss of productivity because people don't feel like dealing with it, that can typically, you may find that it evens out. So in addition to that figure, the majority of clients want to work with a firm or would strongly prefer a firm that has modern technology. 40% of clients surveyed by Integris will actually pay more to work with a law firm that has modern technology. Again, that comes back to the customer experience. So we want to, as a law firm, you want to nail that word of mouth. You want excellent reviews. You want to be able to, have clients refer you. If they have a bad experience with you that oftentimes can be caused by technology, that's just not going to happen. So, they want a law firm who's super responsive. If you're having issues with your old email servers or, you have physical equipment that goes out, it just, clients don't really understand the technicality of that. They just understand that you're not answering the phone or you're not answering your email. The better customer service you can provide, the better referrals you're going to get, right? And as I said, the rate of change with technologies for law firms, it tends to be pretty slow. So you kind of have this opportunity to not only better your experience day to day and better your client's experience day to day, but also, represent yourself as a leader in that way. So if no one else in your marketplace is doing it, be the first, right? So Michelle talked about showing the ROI. Very critical. I have had many methods of doing this throughout the years, and I will tell you now, if you're working on really having a consistent and kind of robust marketing effort, you really don't want to be doing this on spreadsheets. You don't want to be doing this by looking, recording your LinkedIn analytics, let's say, then going into your CRM and recording that, then going to, your mail provider. You just want to maybe get a tool that does all of it because it'll make your life so much easier. And the way to kind of drive that investment is to get your stakeholders to tell you what they want to see. So, don't spend your whole year chasing something like building your email list and increasing that if, at the end of the year you might get the question, "Hey, why did we only gain, 5 followers on LinkedIn?" So you want to know where to focus those efforts, and you want to kind of have the technology in place that tracks it. We use a tool where I can generate reports like, I mean, super, super seamlessly and super customizable kind of stuff. And it makes my life so much easier, and it makes it so much easier to build a business case for the initiatives that you want to do. So, you know, not to plug the industry, not to throw it out there, but this is something that I find, and even I have done this in the past. It doesn't seem like something that you really take to your IT team. I think people think of them as like, you know, the printer's broken, fix it, or we have this issue, fix it. But if you have like a really proactive and great, either an MSP, an IT provider, whoever you're working with right now, you can ask for suggestions about software like this to solve for business cases. You can present a budget and say, I need you to find something like this, that's safe, that's not one of those kind of sketchy free AI extensions that may or may not be a virus. So you can always ask about that and kind of, wrap that marketing technology into your larger technology conversations. Okay, this is the topic I've been waiting to get to. Very passionate about this. So, data and security breaches, they are a PR nightmare. They are a marketing killer. I know that it seems like something like, I think we're all in the same boat, knowing that these are not pleasant experiences to have. But I'm going to talk to you like purely from a marketing perspective. This is a pretty bad thing, and I want to talk about kind of how we get through it. So the kind of core tenets of marketing are know, like, and trust. All right. So I've put together these Google reviews for you that I just want to walk you through for a sec. So we have a 1-star review here for a restaurant that someone wrote. They gave it 1 star because it was not open yet when this person went to the restaurant. We have a 1-star review by G of a park in Toronto that said the kids playing baseball at this park were terrible. 1 star for the park. M here went to Yosemite National Park and believed that they had turned several waterfalls off for the season. Don't think they control that. But on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have Tommy's Family Restaurant got a 5-star review because the reviewer's name was also Tommy. We don't know if he ever actually went to the restaurant. So I'm showing you this because I want to make the point that people gain and lose brand loyalty over very strange things sometimes. And it goes to show you how fragile trust is. And that's something that, as Michelle's whole presentation was threaded with, that's really kind of one of your main goals as a law firm is to lean into that trust and, to be the person that people come to or be the company that people come to when they have a crisis or when they need something, very big in their life. So you don't want to lose that, right? And unfortunately, having a breach or having a cybersecurity incident is one of the fastest ways to lose that. So, 40% of clients would consider leaving or outright fire their law firm if a breach occurred. So, imagine your list of clients today 40% smaller. And, that's a pretty terrible situation. In addition, it prevents you from getting new clients. So your reputation gets tarnished by this, obviously, and there can be sanctions that are put on you that further kind of drive that nail in. So the ABA requires reasonable efforts to protect client data, and they kind of move, this goalpost moves depending on which governing body you ask or what that kind of means. Like, what exactly do you have to prove, and how do you have to document it? So that's a big possibility. It also skews your search. So, as Michelle mentioned, AI looks for authoritative sources to give responses. So, when your law firm is breached, how many times, let's ask this. How many times have you gotten an email? I subscribe personally to law.com and a couple of other pretty great publications. How many times have you gotten an email with the news headline that says law firm breached or law firm being sued after data breach? And then you kind of start associating their name with that incident, right? So AI does the same thing and it kind of crawls the internet to find information about you. And now that AI is at the top of that Google, that Google search, that Bing search, and people just, type stuff into ChatGPT to try to look for law firms like you, it's skewing their search because AI prefers, unfortunately, those news sources, and it's big news when client data gets breached. So, that being said, people are, I find people are a lot more familiar with how cyber attacks happen today. Scams are a lot more widespread, and people individually are aware of their risk also, and many of them have been scammed. So I think that there is a Hail Mary, right? And there's a recovery from this kind of really damaging event, and that's response. So when you're giving a response to a crisis of any kind, but very much especially a cyber attack, people want you to be competent, clear, timely, and concise. So you need to, they don't want to get an email from their law firm that says, well, a month ago, there was an incident. We didn't know about it, but we do now. And some of your data may have been impacted, probably, but we're not sure what. We'll get back to you. They want to hear, yesterday at 9:05 a.m., we were breached in this way. This is how it happened. How did we respond? We immediately called in a cyber forensics team and alerted our IT provider. Here's what we're doing now to mitigate it. Luckily, it only got our list of client names and not any other identifying information. We still know that's bad. Here's what we're doing differently. They want to know that they can trust you. Even and so after this ultimate kind of trust breaking event, this is how you recover. To be able to respond that way, you have to have an incident response plan in your organization, is my opinion. That if you don't know how you're going to fix a data breach or an issue, then and you haven't practiced it, then you might not be capable of providing that kind of response that people want. And as promised, your action items on the tech side. Number one, get those apps and the bills under control. Figure out where your features overlap. Figure out what you're paying for and when you're paying for it, and see what the cost of your time and training is versus the cost of that upgrade. Position your firm as the leader. If you've been thinking about upgrading your technology and you think that has nothing to do with marketing, as I said, it absolutely does. So position your firm as the leader by doing that first in your marketplace. Track and prove your ROI. Find those tools. Like I said, IT can help you that make it easy. You don't need to be going through 15 spreadsheets. I know it sucks. I've done it. So you shouldn't have to do it. And there are tools available to really help you with that. And lastly, protect your reputation. 4 in 10 law firms have experienced a cyber attack in recent years. Protect yourself and have that plan in place just in case it happens, because it does, unfortunately.